Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam the Ashen, and today I'm going to be showing you my journey through the first 10 bosses on V Rising in 2023. Let's get right into the video. Starting out, I got my first creature blood, and it mainly enhances your movement speed, which was pretty clutch for me because I'm trying to head towards the center of the map so that I can build a base there. I want to be local to pretty much everything. The journey wasn't too bad. There was a lot of stuff that I had to run by, some other stuff that I didn't, like some low-level humans, but as I went farther in the map, the creatures got higher level. I was lucky enough to find an 80% creature. The higher the percentage, the better stats and buffs that you get. After arriving to a good place near the center of the map, I went ahead and put my castle heart down and started to build my base. I just did the basics for now, like the workshop tables and the crafting stuff, so that I could upgrade my armor and my weapons and my farming tools. And after that was done, I went ahead and set my sights on my first boss, which was the Alpha Wolf. Unfortunately for me, it was pretty far away, actually towards the starting area where I came from, but I made my way back there, found the Alpha Wolf, and it actually wasn't too bad. The hardest part is when it summoned its little wolf buddies and you kind of get ganged up on, but even then, it's not too bad. If you have your starter gear and you don't level up like I did, it might be a little tougher, but still should be manageable. After defeating the Alpha Wolf, I went ahead and extracted the V-Blood, which gave me one of my favorite spells in the whole game, which is turning into the wolf, which gets you a pretty big buff and movement speed. After that, I went ahead and head to a bandit camp to find Rufus the Foreman, which was next up on my boss list. And luckily, he wasn't too bad either. The camp had a lot of materials that I needed to get started, and the boss gives you a new spell. After extracting his V-Blood, I went ahead and came across a trading post on my way to the next boss, which would be important later. My next boss was the Frost Archer, and after defeating her, you get a new ranged spell, which chills enemies and makes them move pretty slow. I don't use it a whole lot, but it's not a bad spell. She wasn't too bad. I got her isolated in the tent so that all of her friends couldn't team up on me, and it was a pretty easy fight. After defeating her, I went ahead and cleared out the rest of the camp. I was starting to get a pretty good feel for the combat, especially with the counter spell. So I went ahead and stayed in the camp, and I defeated her a couple more times, thinking I could farm some things. But really all you get is some blood essence and maybe an untainted heart, so not super worth it, but not a total waste of time. After I was done there, I went ahead and headed back home, which was much easier thanks to the wolf form. After getting home, I upgraded my castle and learned that I had unlocked real castle walls, so that was next up on my list. I explored a nearby cemetery, which turned out to be a pretty big mistake because it was nearly impossible to get anything done in there, and I almost died way too many times, so after trying over and over again, I went ahead and left. Luckily for me, on my way out of there and after healing up, I found the next boss on my list, which was the Ravager, and this boss was actually by far the hardest boss that I have faced yet on V Rising up to this point. Luckily for me, the Alpha Wolf was also nearby, so he kind of joined in on the fight, and none of these guys are friends, so they fought each other a lot too. So the fight would have been a lot harder than it was. After that, I went ahead and headed to another bandit camp looking for my next boss, which was down in the mine, and luckily I needed some copper at the same time, so I went ahead and got that while I was there as well. After getting down to the bottom, I fought Errol the Stonebreaker, and he was a really cool boss, but he was actually really easy. So I didn't have too tough of a time on this fight, but it was a fun fight, and got it done, extracted his V-Blood, and unlocked a new Chaos ability, which is one of my favorite trees. After that, I headed to another bandit camp to fight another boss, and this one was significantly harder than any boss I've faced yet, except for maybe the Ravager. Luckily, he throws these caltrops out, and there's armor placed around that you can use to be invulnerable. You can't attack, but you can walk over the caltrops to get rid of them. After finding that trick out, the fight wasn't too bad after learning his pattern, and eventually he fell as well. So, what did I do? I extracted his V-Blood. I found silver at the bandit camp, but it didn't do too much damage, so I took it back to my base, and on the way I found a level 93 blood pool for a rogue, which was amazing. So after that, I explored around my base a little bit and came across some garlic farms. I think it's Dunley Farms, and it was brutal. The enemies here are way higher level, and just a group of 2 or 3 can prove to be a huge challenge. So I spent some time farming so that I could get my real castle walls up and get all my real floors down, because I wanted to do some base upgrades and get better gear. After I was done farming, I went ahead and put all the castle walls up, and eventually after I was done with that, the walls closed in and I had a roof. No more having to worry about the sun. I could now move my Miss Brazier outside. This game has really beautiful graphics, so I went ahead and did some decorating too. Not much, just a little with the torches because it has some really cool colors. After that, I went back out and made the mistake of getting the garlic debuff, which affects you after death, and fought some very hard enemies, and I died. So that was my first death, and it was right by my base, so I was faced with a problem. I could either go away from my base to level up and get more stuff, or continue struggling to fight these guys. So, being the stubborn person that I am, I continued to struggle. And Jade the Vampire Hunter quickly reminded me that it doesn't matter how stubborn I am, I'm gonna die. So, I went back to the smaller level areas and found Lydia the Chaos Archer, which was a really fun fight, really cool boss, and she gives me an ability from the Chaos Tree, which is one of my favorite trees, probably my favorite. After defeating Lydia, I went ahead and headed back to the graveyard and met one of the hardest enemies that I have faced yet. It was similar to a rogue, but the zombie version, and it was a very tough fight. And there's a lot of these guys in there. After a while though, I got a little bit better at it and finally came across the next boss on my list. This guy was such a pain, and he summoned so many creatures to help him. The fight was nearly impossible. So, as I'm whittling away at his health, terrible tragedy starts to strike, and I fell off the side and run back up, and in the meantime, this guy heals, because I guess the game treats it like I ran. So after running out of blood and being forced to leave, I bailed. I decided to try to follow the game's order of the bosses because it pretty consistently felt like I was punching above my weight. So next up on the list was Clive the Firestarter, who was pretty tough at first until I got rid of all his little friends, and then he wasn't too bad at all. Quite a sponge, but not too bad. So after beating him, I took his blood and was on to the next. Next up on the list was the Ferocious Bear, so I headed to the bear cave and went to work. This fight was actually pretty easy until I got cocky, and then I started to get my butt whooped by the bear, and it wasn't fun. I had to play it very safe after getting pretty low health. I didn't have many chances to heal, so it was a very long, tough fight because I got cocky. So, after dodging the same 5 moves over and over again while throwing chaos balls at him, he finally went down. And now, after extracting his blood, I also had the bear form as well as the wolf form. Well everyone, I know it's kind of a short video, but that is all for today. I had fun making this video. This is a great game, and they've made a lot of improvements to it in 2023. So if you guys want to see more of V Rising, please let me know. I'd be happy to do some more videos. I really appreciate you watching. Thank you for coming down. If you liked the video, leaving a like or a comment helps me out a lot. And if you want to see more from me, subscribing to the channel is a great way to do that. I appreciate you watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Have a good one.